right. Hey on Facebook, folks. You're
All
watching
right.
how the
Hey,
sausage
everybody.
gets made.
Sorry. YouTube was just threw an absolute a spanner in the works, like literally 30 seconds before we went live. But I'm pretty sure that we're going now, that we are on both, that everything
Yep.
is working properly. It's been a while since we've had a technical issue,
It has been. We've
Greg, and
been pretty.
we had a bunch of them lately on this account. But I think we're good. I
We
think we're
have
good.
we have been pretty smooth for the last few months, or at
Yeah.
least month or
Yeah,
two.
they can see us. They can see us. Here we go.
All right. Hello, YouTube.
We're back. We're back.
And
Oh my
hello,
goodness.
Facebook.
Oh my goodness. Yeah. Hi, all the folks who Beaufort, South Carolina, Greenwich Village, North Carolina, Kevin Sarsfield from Miami, Scott Hickman, Gavin Allvine, Manny Majorans. We got a lot of people. I could go through the whole list, but we're already running about 6 minutes late.
We're
And from
fine.
Western Washington, Anna Cortez. It's cold there today. Lucky you. Godwit Days Bird Festival in Arcata, California. Gary Bloomfield. Good to see you, Gary. So many
Yeah.
folks bearing with us as we deal with these ridiculous technological issues. Hey, we're What's This Bird? We're
Hello.
we're the American Birding Association most of the time. And,
Most of the time.
and we're here to talk birds and birding with you all today. Greg, just take it. I gotta very
For those of you just popping in, basically what happened is YouTube decided to revoke our stream access at the 30 seconds before we were going live. But Nate managed to wrangle that situation into control.
Pulled it back.
And so here we are about 5 minutes late, but that's fine. If we have to go a little over, we'll go a little over. That's cool.
Yeah. That's all right.
So, welcome to What's This Bird? And what we do here is we take photographs and sometimes other things such as drawings or audios, recordings from our What's This Bird group on Facebook, which is now, I think, well over 100,000 people.
Yeah, it's a lot of people.
And there's cool bird pictures coming through all the time. And I pick a few.
All over the world.
All over the world, yeah. And I pick a few that I think are pertinent, poignant at the time, and to help through ID things. And sometimes, like today, we run the gamut from things that are, even if you're if you've been birding for a little while, you know these things, but it's nice to be reminded, refreshed, all the way to, okay, that's a hard one. So we're gonna run the gamut today.
We get a lot.
And so Nate, how you doing?
I'm doing all right. It's hot here, Greg.
It's hot
cool
here
down a little bit. I haven't been doing a ton of birding. I got all my breeding bird survey stuff submitted last week, so that monkey is off my back. It was a good year for breeding bird survey. I was a little bit later than I usually run it, and I think that affected my species count and certainly species total for a lot of species. But it also bumped up a lot of stuff. I had families of pileated woodpeckers flying around, and so my pileated woodpecker count was off the charts this year when it usually isn't. Usually I'm lucky to get one in some of these places. So it's weird how a difference of 2 weeks can make a big difference in the kind of birds that you can note. I'm pretty sure all the birds that I usually see are there. Some of them are quieter than usual. Some of them are louder than usual, and that certainly affects the birds that I see, the birds that I note on my breeding bird survey. And they've got some special calculations that they put in there to keep track of that stuff and make it accurate, or at least make that information useful. But it was an interesting year. It's been an interesting breeding bird season. Some changes on my routes which were unexpected, and some that were positive, some that were negative. That's the way those things go. So.
And speaking of breeding birds, I do a lot of yard birding in my tiny little urban yard. And the last couple of years, I've noticed broad-winged hawks, and lately they're I see them soaring over occasionally all summer long. I figured, there's forest preserves not that far away.
Yeah.
But lately I've been seeing them down low in the trees being chased by robins and things. So I'm suspecting that we might have some urban nesting broad-winged hawks, which is kind of unusual.
Yeah, that's cool. That's not a bird that I usually associate with urban nesting. That's a hawk that likes kind of unbroken woodlands for it to nest. At least that's where I see them. in
It's a
places where there's a
tropical
little more
forest hawk
expensive.
that spends the
Yeah,
summers up here. I mean,
yeah,
it's
yeah.
they're interesting birds. Want to give a quick shout out to Laura, Daphne, and Rose and Len on Facebook. You guys watching on YouTube and Facebook, if you have anything to say, if you have any, just want to give a shout out or have a question or a comment, drop it in the comments.
Yeah,
There we are
I'm looking at
watching.
them every once in a while over there.
Yeah,
And
we're
keeping
so
an
am
eye
I
on
over
because
here.
That's why my eyes are like, yeah. So,
We're watching. Um, yeah, so if you've got something, just pop it in there, and we will do our best to get to you.
oh, I don't know if I mentioned this on a previous episode, Greg, but Hot Limpkin Summer finally made it to my backyard, more or less this year. I mean, we were like 3 summers late, but it did happen.
That's
Um,
cool.
Yeah, so like many people, I've been watching the Limpkin eruption that happened a couple years ago and reached
Yeah,
its peak maybe in maybe 2023, and I knew that if I waited long enough, we here in North Carolina we've had a few, not as many as
yeah,
some of the upper Midwest states have had, but I knew that if I waited long enough, I'd get one close that I wouldn't have to chase. And
yeah.
earlier this summer, I got the notation on the group me that a limpkin had been spotted at a little backwater of a lake off a trail, literally like 3 minutes from my driveway. And so I jumped in the car and ran out there and got it. And yeah, so I finally have limpkin for the state and for the county, which was a bonus. It was the first county
That's
record. So.
yeah, that's still a need for me.
Limpkins,
There were limpkins
still a
all
thing.
over. There were limpkins all over the Chicago area in 2023,
Yeah.
and I just did not get an opportunity to get out and get it. And it'll be interesting to see if it's cyclical the way it was. And what I mean by that was, at least, using Illinois as an example because I know it well, there was one limpkin that showed up downstate one year, and then the next year there was another one, and then another one, and then the next year there were 20 of them.
Yeah.
And I wonder if that's going to happen again, where it's like, okay, there was one or two, there was one in Wisconsin. They've been kind of floating around a little bit. Next year, will there be a dozen? And then the year after? Yeah.
It could be, that's the sort of pattern we see with a lot of those kind of South Coast wetland species. Black-billed whistling duck and neotropic cormorant seem to kind of move in cyclical patterns as we're maybe a decade and a half in to watching those species kind of ebb and flow across in their patterns, and they do kind of show that pattern. It'd be interesting to see that if limpkin does the same thing, because we're still in early days when it comes to limpkins breeding on the upper Texas coast, Louisiana. I don't think that's going to change. I think they're going to stay there for a while now that they've established themselves. But whether or not they kind of push northward into the rest of the continent, that remains to be seen. So yeah,
On Facebook we have a question. Where are you located? I think
For
it's
me?
to us. Well, I think it's to us.
We can do that. Sometimes we forget that maybe newbies who are.
It might be for the other person in the. Yeah. Might be for the other person in the chat. It's hard to say. Hi, Mia.
You know what?
Mia
Who
just
knows?
popped in.
We'll just
but I'm in the Chicago area. Nate's in North Carolina.
I'm in Western Piedmont in North Carolina, Greensboro.
Yeah.
Is the city where I am.
So, all right. I think it's time to get to the housekeeping.
The housekeeping. Len Kopka asked, does anyone know when Avalos will be adopted into Clements? Great question. Don't know. I don't think it'll be this year. I think it will probably be next year, which gives them a little bit of time to make some changes. But yes, let's talk American Birding Podcast. The podcast came out yesterday with Natasha Bartoletta of the National Loon Center up in Cross Lake, Minnesota, talking about our ABA 2025 Bird of the Year and all the outreach that they do to encourage loon conservation, encourage water quality up there in Minnesota. Great conversation, great loon stories, a lot of fun stuff. National Loon Center. They're getting a brand new building, a structure. Currently, they are kind of in a storefront, but they're going to get their own brand new state of the art loon center up in Minnesota, destination, no doubt,
cool.
For loonies out there. Minnesota loves loons. Minnesota loves their loons.
You know what? We have found by choosing common loon as the ABA Bird of the Year for this year, we have discovered that there's a whole lot of people all over the place that love loons.
Sure. I think we already sort of knew it. I mean, Canadians have it on their money, and it's a symbol of the North, and so all those people up there in Canada, but also the northern tier of the United States Minnesota, Wisconsin, Michigan, Maine, all big loon fans up there.
Yeah, I think the only bird that approached, in terms of the program, um, that was in the same category as common loon in terms of popularity was cedar waxwing that we did in
Yeah,
2020.
yeah.
That was another one. People love their cedar waxwings.
The irony, of
Um,
course, of doing a incredibly social, gregarious bird at a time when we were all stuck inside is not lost
yes.
on us.
So our first bird of the day. We're going to start off with a common, what I like I said, for most people who bird a fair amount, this is pretty easy. But
Duck.
there's always exactly all right. Let's move on
Hmm.
to our. Um, but uh, you know, when you get down to the details, maybe not quite so. So, the person who posted this asked if it is an American black duck because it's got that yellow bill and it's got the pale head and it looks
Hmm.
pretty dark. Um, but
Yeah, I mean,
so
just to back up a little bit, it's always kind of
yeah,
useful to break our ducks into kind of dabbling versus diving ducks. Dabbling ducks are the kind of large-bodied, long-bodied ducks with a very broad-based bill, long,
hmm
broad-based bill. Our diving ducks are a little bit shorter, a little bit more compact, usually a bigger head compared to the size of their body. It kind of broken down even further for those birds into like sea ducks and scop and
yeah,
red-headed canvasback and also mergansers, of which this definitely is not merganser with a very long,
yes,
thin, serrated bill that's super unique. This one's definitely one of the dabblers. And even further, this is one of the anise ducks, the mallard and mallard-like ducks, of which there are a number of them in the ABA area, and they pose some pretty interesting identification conundrums, especially considering
they
how
can.
ubiquitous and common and familiar that the mallard is. But all the mallard type ducks, of which this person is suggesting, American black duck, but also mottled Mexican duck, and
Yeah,
those are the kind of the big four, right?
yeah.
Of the anise
Well,
ducks that in their female plumages and then their male plumage, aside from mallard, non-green headed plumage, I should say, can be
or
can be tough. Can be tough.
yeah, and with the yellow bill, all of those birds have the males, anyways, have yellowish bills.
Mm-hmm.
And so what I
Kind
what
of
I really
brown
wanted to,
patterned body.
what I really and when before we got on the air here, Nate and I were talking about this photo, and he said the wings look weird, and
Mm-hmm.
the thing that I wanted to point out here is that the wingtips are missing; they're gone,
Yeah.
and
Yeah. So ducks, all ducks in particular, all ducks go through this period called eclipse plumage, which is a kind of a late summer phenomenon. Kind of I don't even know what it is. It's like a mid molt. It's not like a
yeah,
full molt, but it's kind of a quasi molt or whatever, where a lot of the male ducks kind of have these female characteristics, female plumage characteristics, largely because they lose their ability to fly for a
right,
brief period of time. Ducks, like, they will molt all of their wing feathers all at once and grow
all at
them in
once.
all together. And ducks, they have the luxury, I suppose, as birds go, of being able to avoid predators by going out on the water.
Yep.
Instead of needing to fly to avoid predators, so they can adopt this kind of unique molt strategy, wherein they lose all their flight feathers all at once, and you get a bird like this where the it doesn't look like it has wingtips because they're all gone. They're growing in.
We got a couple comments on Facebook. What about volume issues? Are we needing to turn something up here, you guys? If you could chime
I
in
hear
and
you
let us
fine,
know.
Greg.
Yep, I hear you too. And
Mhm.
the graphs are showing that everything's pretty good here.
The charts,
Um,
the charts are good.
yeah.
Sometimes
All
they
right, we're
look
going to
like
get
this.
back to this bird. So the thing that I wanted to talk about here was eclipse plumage, and it's
Hmm.
something that throws new birders off every summer. And we all know what a male mallard looks like with the gray
Bright
back
green.
and the green
It
head,
is
and
the ubiquitous duck. It is what
yes.
people think of when they think duck.
But in the summertime, the males can look almost anything from very, very much like a female to to a mottled duck, to a black duck. but there's always a couple of tells that you can tell a mallard from any of those other Annis ducks. Thank you guys for chiming in and saying you can hear us. That's good. That means our equipment is working the way we expect it to. One, if you look at all these mallards, so the four birds down the right side and the one bird at the lower left are all mallards in various plumages that are not adult male, or I should say, yeah, breeding male. They all have white tails. And the dabbling ducks that have white tails, I believe, off the top of my head, are two, northern shoveler and mallard. I don't think there's any others with white tails. Obviously, shoveler would be pretty easy because of that massive bill. But
can't molt the bill. Can't molt the bill. Bill is going to be the same all the time.
But if you use just a little bit of imagination, you can see in all of the four birds on the right, you can kind of see a little hint at the breeding male plumage. So you'll see how there's like a little bit of a chestnut wash on the breast right below the neck. And you can see how there's, well, in the one up from the bottom, it's got a little green on the head. It's got that little bit of black rump that kind of stands out against the rest of the plumage. The mottling and the streaking and everything can be all over the place. But you can still get a good hint of what's in there, so to speak. Also, the speculum, and that is the iridescent patch on the wing. If you look at the two birds at lower left, the black duck in the middle and the mallard, you see the black duck has almost no white border on the speculum, and the mallard shows two broad white borders on the speculum. When we get into mottled versus Mexican versus female mallard, that's another discussion that gets pretty in the weeds.
And both of those would be extremely unlikely for Michigan too. So I think we can kind of play our odds here, and say that the two that we're really seriously considering, are going to be mallard and American black duck. And a couple notations I think in the comments just to point out. I have to scroll back to before the volume. Someone pointed out, and I apologize for not calling you out, that the breast on our mystery bird looks a little bit pale. Yeah, for sure. You know, black duck is called black duck for a reason. It is extremely dark, pretty much all across the body. And even in the wing as well, the kind of pale gray wings that we see on that, the tertials, kind of the feathers that are guarding the wing feather, the flight feathers that aren't there in this.
Aren't there.
So all we see are the tertials. Those plain gray tertials are very much a mallard thing, and less of a black duck thing, where that would be more brown, as would the rest of the body be. And also, just to point out, mottled duck, not a wing thing, but mottled duck, which is a bird that we see down here in the southeast from time to time.
Yeah.
Usually has a big kind of spot right here on the gape
at the base of
the bill that stands out, and that's usually the first thing you see for an extra liminal mottled duck, if you're looking for one. And they do show up from time to time in places like Michigan, but
they show up in the Great the Great Lakes. I mean, I've seen them in Illinois. But yeah, it's that the demarcation between the chest and the head is one thing that really throws people off when they see a mallard and think that it's a black duck, because the females generally don't do that, and that's a field mark that's pointed out. That's a field mark that's pointed out on black duck and mottled duck as well.
Yep. Mallard. When in doubt,
So-
it's almost always a mallard. I mean, they're the
Yes.
most common one by across the continent. And when you throw in all the weirdo, domestic ducks with weird colorations in there too, it makes things even more complicated when it comes to these birds. But you pretty much start from the position of it's a mallard. Where do I go from here? And why is it? Where are the things that are not mallard like? Because mallard is going to be the by far the most likely option for most of these birds across most of the continent. There are some places in the southeast where black ducks can congregate, but
But
not as many.
but yeah,
Even there's a lot of mallards.
look at the tail first. The white tail
Yeah.
is always a
Yeah.
tell.
Yep, that's a good one.
Christy from East Tennessee says that they've been out looking. Well, they have some oddities, some post-breeding wandering. They've got a roseate spoonbill and a wood stork and a brown booby. And the decisions. Well, I would go for the booby because the other two are almost annual in Tennessee. And the booby is definitely not.
Booby's a hard one.
Yeah.
Although brown booby does turn up inland with weird regularity, but roseate spoonbill seems like that's an every 3-4 year thing where they make incursions into the southeast. Wood stork is the same way. That's a bird that his population just in general has increased a ton. That's a great conservation success story. We have roseate spoonbills here in North Carolina as well. I know there's like 3 of them up in Maryland. Abbas Winklockner has been talking about those. We have 2 or 3 of them down here in North Carolina. They're every other year sort of bird down here. So I would imagine that they will get up into Tennessee from time to time as well. Now's the time of year for those wandering waders. This is post-breeding dispersal season for them.
Late July, August, and into early September, definitely.
Got
a shout out from our former colleague Carl Bendorf, who is enjoying the heck out of retirement. Nice to see you in the house, Carl. All right. Again, another common bird across most of the ABA area.
Louisiana. Yeah, we got a woodpecker here, Greg. I think we can pretty clearly narrow it down there.
I think that looks like a woodpecker, Nate.
They are extremely distinctive with that upright posture, those big old grasping feet with a zygodactyl pattern, which is like an X-shaped pattern. And we can't see the tip of the tail, but I imagine it's pressed tight against that branch, bracing that
looks
bird
like it is.
to kind of work its way around there. So this, if we're breaking it down even more of our kind of common black and white woodpeckers, there are 3 of the ones that show this pattern. All 3 could be possible in Louisiana.
Well, yeah, but there's a tell there that
red cockade would be a hard one. Red cockade would be would be unlikely.
There's a tell there that narrows it down to 2 right away, and that's that it's got a white back.
White back and a black cheek.
Yes. And that narrows it down to 2, Downy and hairy.
The classic Downy and hairy. I don't know that we've ever talked about Downy and hairy on these programs, Greg, because that's a common ID conundrum, or at least we haven't done it in many a year.
We haven't done it in quite a while if we have, because I went back looking for old comps to see if I had one and did not. But so this is either a Downy or a hairy woodpecker, and it is one of the ID challenges that new birders face because the 2 species are virtually identical. But
even though they are not closely related,
but they're not closely related.
One of those weird evolution things, like
so.
The yellow
Let's take a
legs,
look.
Not closely related.
Let's take a look at how to tell those 2 apart.
Yeah. So for me, the first thing you're looking for is almost always the bill.
Yep.
Downy woodpecker has this little tiny chisel bill that is almost ludicrously small, and a lot of times I tell people that it's cute. Yeah, for sure. And a lot of times I will tell people, if you have any question at all about the bill, if you're kind of on the fence about it, it's a Downy woodpecker. Because when you see a hairy woodpecker, like the size of the bill, the kind of regular proportioned woodpecker bill on a on a hairy woodpecker really stands out. And the bird feels just in general like a regular woodpecker. It's kind of shaped more like like a red-bellied woodpecker shoved into a Downy woodpecker skin. Like the colors and the patterns are very similar, but the shape and structure of the bird is more kind of classic woodpecker than it is the Downy, which is odd for woodpeckers just because it is so small.
Well, yeah, I mean, Downy is kind of like the chickadee of woodpeckers, at least for us.
Acts like a chickadee too.
It does, and that's at least here, in the tropics, you get things like picolets, and they're
for sure
little, but
even smaller. Yeah.
So the reason that I chose these 2 to illustrate the point you just mentioned, and other clues. So as Nate said, the bill once you get familiar with the bill size, and there is variation. There are small-billed Harrys and large-billed Downies,
Hmm.
but there's really no overlap. I mean,
No, not at
there
all.
just isn't.
They're
Um,
different. They're
so
different,
once
different seeming birds.
Yeah, so once you get comfortable with that, then it's a slam dunk. If the
Hmm.
birds call at all, that's
It
also a
helps.
slam dunk.
It helps.
The Michael Bowen, another ABA
Hey, another
um,
ABA colleague.
former, yes, good to see you, Michael. But yeah, if you get familiar with that, that's easy. If you hear the bird call, Downy woodpecker has a very high pitched. It's a
Yeah, like a
small
little
call, and
squeak toy, little
it's a
dog toy,
squeak toy. Hairy woodpecker is it's
big
got a
squeak toy.
much louder. It's a big squeak toy, exactly.
Yeah. My
Um,
dog is always imitating Harry Woodpecker all the time, especially when I'm trying to do something quietly. I'm surprised she's not doing it now.
Another clue, and birds fly around, birds do things, they can go anywhere almost, but there are often habitat clues.
Oh,
And
absolutely.
if you see a woodpecker that's out on the outer branches, or like this one on
Hmm.
dried up forbs or corn stalks or anything like that, it's
Yeah.
almost always going to be a downy
Yeah.
woodpecker. That's
I mean,
that's their
you said it, Greg. Like they act like chickadees a lot of times. Like they
Yes, they
move
do.
around, like they move around in flocks of chickadees and
They
titmice.
do.
They act like chickadees. Harry Woodpecker acts like a woodpecker. Like it is on the main branches of the tree. It is on the larger
And the
branches.
trunk.
It
Yeah.
is a lot of times they hang out with pileated woodpeckers. A lot of times if I see a pileated
I was
woodpecker, like I'll hang out a little bit and see if there's a hairy kind of following it.
Yep.
That's kind of a weird kind of species association that checks out more often than not. As Hairy woodpecker is not a super common bird, at least where I live, kind of in the lower
Not
part of the South. As you go north, they get more common.
Well, it's I mean, here in the Western Great Lakes, they're not rare
Hmm.
by any stretch, but
Yeah,
you
yeah.
do have to make an effort to see them.
I
Um,
easily could miss it
yeah.
on a breeding bird survey on an outing. Yeah. Whereas
And
Downy, it's hard to miss.
so one other thing I wanted to mention is that David Sibley, who has a wonderful blog where he posts things that he discovers and things that he has found useful in identifying birds, especially common birds. And he has two posts. If you Google it up, he has two posts about Downy and hairy woodpecker. One's a little bit old, but it points out the difference in the neck pattern, especially
Mm.
when viewed from behind. And that's the upper figure there that you can see in the center. So you can see how the hairy woodpecker on the right has much less white on the sides of
Hmm.
the neck, and it's got kind of like a little comma shape that comes up, and that patch, that white patch behind the ear patch, is narrower in the hairy woodpecker. But also, and this is a newer post from him, the males, the red patch on the back of the head is split in half by a black bar on hairy, and on Downy it's a solid red bar that goes across the back of the head.
Leave it to David
Last
to come up with a field mark that I probably won't use, but I appreciate knowing anyway.
You know what? It's one of those things where, uh, it'll come in handy at some point. And lastly, the tail. Downy usually, not always, but usually shows some dark barring on the outer tail feathers, and
Hmm.
hairy usually does not.
Hmm.
So all of those things put together make this ID fairly straightforward. We got
Yeah.
Will tuning in from Salt Lake City, says he saw his first hairy for the first time in a long time a couple of weeks ago, is feeding young.
Yeah, I mean, I'll go long periods of time without seeing hairy woodpecker. It's kind of weird that way. Though they do get, as I said, they do get more common the further north you go. At least
Yeah.
seems that way. And where I live in the mountains, if you go up higher in elevation, you tend to see more hairy woodpeckers
Yeah.
up higher than you see downy woodpeckers. I probably here it's probably like 15, 20 to 1
Yeah.
when I'm out, but if I go up, it might get closer to 5 to 1, 10 to 1, something like that.
Yeah, we have where I live. I'm in urban Chicagoland, and there's a forest preserve. I don't know, about a mile and a half from me that has a lot of dead ash trees, and pileated woodpeckers have started to show up there in the last few years, and there's hairy woodpeckers in there. But I had an ash tree in my backyard that we had to take down because of emerald ash borer. But I had a hairy woodpecker for about 5 years that was a resident in my neighborhood that was feeding on my tree. And when we had to take the tree down, I have not seen or heard that bird since.
Yeah, I think they have larger territories, so there's just fewer
Yeah.
of them on the landscape, and yeah, like I said, they're more like a regular woodpecker in that sense, whereas a downy woodpecker can take advantage of a lot more different sort of habitats, different more opportunities to feed
Yeah.
because they'll go out on the tips of the branches and are on the forbs, like a chickadee, like a titmouse, as we've said. So yeah, yep. Interesting conversation here in YouTube about tail spots on hairy woodpeckers. They do have tail spots in the northwest part of the range, way up there,
Yes.
in places where there are no downy woodpeckers, which is an interesting bit of
Just going to
natural
mention
history knowledge.
that they also tend to have some plumage differences in the West, too. They sometimes can be kind of a little smoky brown.
Yeah, darker. They get really dark in some of the far northwest. There's a rule for that, like Golger's rule or something like that. I'm not exactly sure. Like things tend to get darker as the precipitation increases.
And Len
there's
Cobb
a lot of
says
birds out there.
Len Cobb says he
like
thinks
that.
hairy woodpeckers get progressively larger the further north in their range.
I
don't
can't
know about
verify that,
but
but that wouldn't surprise me.
That wouldn't surprise me at all.
Yeah.
Okay, we're going to go to Vermont now. And
This is a fun photo. This is a fun photo.
This is. When I showed this to Nate, he had the exact same reaction to it that I did. I pick photos that I think that we'll have some fun talking about, and this is definitely one of those. So tell us what you were thinking.
Well, it is sitting on a wire, which is interesting. Birds tend to look a little bit different. It doesn't show. Can't see the face. Can't see much of the head. A lot of pattern on this bird. Really dark, kind of all over. Big white wing patch. That's kind of interesting.
Ashy,
long tail.
Ashy gray and just a lot of, as you said, modeling and barring, and we can see it's got kind of a long tail with some barring on it. And you mentioned the white wing patch.
So the interesting thing about this bird is that it kind of illustrates how frequently we use behavior, even in a still photograph, to help kind of narrow a bird down. And this is not a behavior that you typically see for the bird that it is, but it is a reasonably common behavior for a bird that looks similar in terms of plumage, but there's some few major differences. So for me, when I look at this thing and if I'm looking above the wire, I'm thinking one thing. If I'm looking below the wire, I am thinking something very, very different. So the below the wire is sort of interesting, especially in light of the photo that you showed last time, Greg, because that part of the bird on the hairy woodpecker was not visible on the photo that we had, which is the kind of long, thin, straight tail feathers of a woodpecker that allow it to, spiky, to kind of brace itself against the wood when it is, getting leverage to do whatever it is the woodpeckers do, banging their heads on trunks and whatnot. Which it's very distinctive. It's a very distinctive woodpecker trait, and it illustrates that this bird is a woodpecker, even though it's doing weird woodpecker stuff. It's not doing stuff that I would associate with woodpecker.
And it's also like it doesn't really jump. Most of our woodpeckers are pretty boldly patterned, and
for sure,
there's black and white and red, and sometimes yellow, brown. But this bird just kind of looks. It just doesn't.
Yeah.
Except for the tail, it does not say woodpecker to me. And Nate
the wings
and I
maybe a little bit. The flight feathers on there. It's got the kind of pattern on the kind of black and white checkerboard pattern that you see with woodpeckers a lot of times.
And the barring on the tail. And so yes. Nate and I both jumped to common nighthawk as something that people might think it is, because nighthawks look goofy sitting on wires. They do it a lot.
They look goofy most of the time.
They do.
Except maybe in flight. Yeah.
They have big white wing patches and long tails.
And the spikes, the kind of tail feathers that we clearly see are tail feathers here.
Yeah.
It could be the wingtips on a common nighthawk that are stretching down, beyond the body. But of
Mm-hmm.
course, we can't see the wingtips on this bird though, which is why when I looked
We
at it, I was like nighthawk, nope, and
no.
then got to the other identification.
Yeah, so if you look at the common nighthawk here up at the top, one tell is just how long those wings are. They come to
Hmm.
the tip of the tail or close. If the bird is balancing on a wire like that, sometimes the wings will be up
They
and
do
they'll
it.
look even way longer because they're kind of
Yeah.
separated from the body.
Hmm.
But it's pretty obvious. And, as Nate mentioned, those tail feathers really, that's a woodpecker trait. And
Yeah.
in Vermont, there's really only two choices for that kind of brownish mottled
That are that
um,
smudgy. Yeah.
at smudgy, and that's a juvenile red-bellied and a juvenile yellow-bellied sapsucker. And the kind of mid-sized birds with big white wing patches,
Yeah.
perching birds, woodpeckers, there aren't very many of them, and the sapsuckers are the most common that have those big white wing patches. And the yellow belly, all the sapsuckers have them in basically all
Hmm.
plumages, no
Yeah.
matter how brown or mottled or whatever.
For sure. Yeah, sapsuckers are weird woodpeckers for a lot of reasons. Not only their kind of
Yes.
bizarre, foraging, feeding techniques, but their plumage is so different from a lot of the woodpeckers. We've talked about that. A lot of woodpeckers have very clean bars, clean black and
Mm-hmm.
white. I mean, pretty much all of their North American woodpeckers, with the exception of Flicker, which is also, even though it's kind of tan and brown, it's still pretty clean
Yeah.
woodpecker. Like all the bars are very well defined.
Yep.
Its sapsucker is so smudgy a lot of times, especially these young birds. So a
Right.
lot of times down here, it's a winter bird down here. It breeds up in the mountains, but where I live, it's primarily a winter bird and a bird you see in migration. You get a lot of these young birds that just don't clock as woodpeckers, and a lot of times they'll do kind of not woodpecker stuff
Oh
too,
yeah.
like sit on a bar like this, on a wire like this, kind
Yep.
of oddly. I don't know that I would ever expect to see, red-headed woodpecker, red-bellied woodpecker, any of our woodpeckers doing this, but sapsucker, it's a weird bird. It's a weird bird in that family.
Yeah, yeah, I agree. So, yes, our mystery bird is a juvenile yellow-bellied sapsucker,
It also makes
and yeah,
strange noises too.
they make strange noises.
Yeah, just an
Um,
all-around oddity.
yeah, yeah. But the thing to look for in sapsuckers is that big white patch on
Yeah,
the
for
upper
sure.
wing.
Every time. Every time.
Yep.
Yeah. And if you hear like a baby crying in the woods, it's not a baby. It's probably a
No, it's
sapsucker.
probably a sapsucker.
Yeah.
Um, all right, we're gonna go to the west coast now, and well, this looks like rocks on the ocean.
Yeah, a lot of that out west.
Yeah, yeah. These look like they shorebirds, maybe plovers, something.
Yeah, big bodies, long wings, longish legs. Yeah, shorebirds. It's by the ocean, by the shore. Clearly, don't know what else would be on there. Pigeons kind of have an interesting, similar shape, but the head would be smaller. The legs would be much
Yeah,
shorter. Sometimes you see pigeons by the shore too.
sure.
At least
Oh,
where I,
I'll
at
tell
least
you
where I
what.
am.
I
They love
I
those
once
piers
was
and
out.
whatnot.
I was once out in the middle of nowhere, not near any kind of structure, where you would expect to see rock pigeons. And there was a rock pigeon walking around out on a mud flat with a bunch of shorebirds.
I believe it.
And
It would look
I
kind
was
of like
like,
a
what
shorebird
the
too.
what
It'd be
the
like a brain
heck is
bird,
that?
right? Your brain
Yeah,
doesn't quite
it's
connect what that is. But pigeons are
precisely.
notorious for that. They are chimeras. They can look like so
Yeah,
many different things and show
yeah.
up in so many different places. But yeah, so
That's
I think we're shorebirds here.
Yep,
Really strong patterns on the face. That's sort of
yep.
unusual for
Short, spiky
shorebirds.
bills.
Short, spiky bill. So I think we can rule out things like calidrus pipers, like the peeps and dowitchers and whatnot, because they tend to have they don't tend to have as much pattern on the face, and they tend to be kind of all
Yeah.
uniformly colored all around. This one's got a lot of white underneath. This is probably, yeah. I mean,
So,
once you narrow it down to the genus, to the group of shorebirds, the
well,
identification
let's
kind of makes itself on
before you
those
do
places.
that.
But
Before you do that, there's on the west coast now, as you say, during migration, and we are in shorebird migration right now. It's summer for a lot of birds, but it's migration. It's fall migration for a lot of other birds. And did I lose
yeah,
you, Nate?
this is it. It's happening.
Okay. Oh, there you
I'm
go.
back. I'm back.
Okay.
Yeah, my internet
Um,
dropped.
but there are really only a few what you would call rock pipers on the West
Hmm.
Coast that are almost always found on
Rocky
the
shorelines. Yeah.
rocky shorelines and jetties and things like that. We can
Yeah.
rule
In the
out
East,
one
we
of
only have a
them.
couple, really.
We can rule out one of them right away, and that is the wandering tattler because it's got yellow legs and it's gray and it looks
Hmm.
like a sandpiper. It doesn't look kind of like this, but the yellow legs, long yellow legs, rule that out. So
Hmm.
let's look at the other ones. And so there's four species that are kind of dark and walk around on the rocks on the west coast. And
It's almost
looking
like
at the
there's a lot
comp,
of dark rocks on the West Coast.
there are a lot of dark rocks on the west coast. Um, you know, I think looking at this comp, you can pretty quickly kind of tell what it is.
Hmm.
Um, but it's not always a straightforward ID, especially when we're talking about winter or juvenile, young bird. Winter plumages are young birds. Um,
Yeah.
so the white facial pattern and the short bill that Nate had pointed out early on. If you look at the black turnstone at the bottom right, ding ding ding, we got that. But now look at the young. A breeding ruddy turnstone is one of the most spectacular of our birds. They're
Former ABA
really,
Bird of the Year.
yeah, former ABA bird of the year, and they're really unmistakable when you see them in that plumage. But now
Hmm.
look at the two young birds on the
Yeah.
far right, ruddy turnstone at the top and black turnstone second up. They're really pretty similar.
They can get
And they
really smudgy this time of
Yeah,
year. They look really the feathers can get really ratty. The face pattern can be all over the place.
yeah,
But they tend to not be as dark. So these birds have that kind of very clean slate, kind of charcoal back that is, running all the way throughout the bird. Whereas there's a little bit more of I hesitate to call it a pattern. You do tend to see some paler feathers mixed in there on a lot of these ruddy turnstones. They tend to have some white feather edging. You can see a little
yeah.
bit of the orangish kind of mixed in there. It's not kind of uniformly patternless dark that you
But if
see
they're
on a black turnstone.
but if they're pretty fresh young birds, they can be dark. And
Yeah.
a,
Oh,
a
they can be
couple of
dark.
the things a couple of the things you're looking for is ruddy turnstone usually has a white throat,
Hmm.
and black turnstone does not. And ruddy turnstone has this kind of horseshoe shaped breast mark
Yeah.
in breeding
Yeah.
plumage, and the immature plumage, it, it in anything other than breeding plumage, it tends to show that as well. Again, you kind of have
Hmm.
to see through what's going on there with the plumages, with the dark edges on the plumage, but it's usually there. Also, the legs are usually orange or yellowish orange
Kind of,
on ruddy
yeah,
turnstone,
the paler. Yeah.
and they're kind of a darkish, kind of burnt red, kind of dark flesh color on black turnstone. Now, the other two to sort of get to here, rock sandpiper, not very common in California,
And it
but
would be really
it's
early too.
it
I
would
mean,
be
that would be
really
like a
early. That's a
midwinter kind of
winter.
bird.
That's a winter
Yeah.
bird. If you're familiar with the purple sandpiper out east, they're almost identical.
They're, yeah.
Um, but it's got a more sandpiper shaped bill, but
It's a
it's got that.
calidrus. Yeah. Kind of a
It,
longer, thinner
yeah,
bill.
yeah, and
Yeah.
it's got brighter legs. But it's got that overall gray plumage. Again, this is in winter plumage, and then surfbird. And surfbird is one of
That's a
my
cool bird.
favorite. It kind of reminds me in ways of, especially in the non-breeding or young plumage. You see the one, it kind of has that gray junco-like plumage with a white belly.
Hmm.
Um,
Hmm.
but the bill and everything and the little, it kind of reminds me of a Cassin's auklet, um,
Yeah.
or
With
or
longer
even
legs.
or even a sheath bill, like a little
Yeah.
diminutive sheath bill.
They are bigger than black turnstones by a
Yeah,
fair amount as well. Yeah,
yeah,
my experience with these birds being an East Coaster is limited pretty much to a trip to San Diego I took many years ago. And we were on a pelagic and we were leaving San Diego Harbor, and then you look for black turnstones and surfbirds on the kind of jetty as you're going out. And Serpent is plump. It's very uniquely shaped. It's a
Yeah.
little more compact front to back than a turnstone is, which is kind of a elongated bird. And that little tiny bill really stands out too. I mean, not that black turnstone has a huge bill, but relatively speaking, compared to the rest of the size of the head and the rest of the size of the bird, the bill does look very compact though. Serpent is really unique.
And
Shorebird
it's always got
in a lot of ways.
that yellow patch on the lower mandible.
Yeah, and tailor legs.
So yes, our birds, our mystery birds are breeding plumage black turnstones.
Yeah. Sarah Coffey has a question. Ruddy shows up in Wisconsin. Black
Yes,
turnstones. Do black turnstones travel away from the West Coast? Yes, but rarely.
very rarely.
There are records for Texas. There are
Yep.
records for I want to say there's maybe even an Oklahoma record. So there's like an inland record
Yeah, there's
of this
something
bird,
that's
but
there's
it's really
there's a couple
really
for the Texas.
uncommon.
There's a couple for the Texas coast that I'm aware of.
Yeah, relatively recently.
I think one of them was a. What's this bird strikes again? Somebody posted it
might have
there,
been.
and that's where it was initially identified.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's what I'm talking about. There is occasionally somebody
Very,
will
very
post
few.
a picture of a vagrant and wonder what it is, and it is a very good bird, and a lot of people are very, very happy that that
Yeah.
bird wound
What's This
up on
bird is a
What's
track
This Bird.
record for that.
Yeah, first record of sharp-tailed sandpiper from Michigan was a
Yeah.
What's This Bird Strikes Again.
I think sharp-tailed sandpiper has shown up a couple times on What's This Bird
Yep.
as a vagrant. That's a commonly encountered vagrant to a lot of parts of the ABA area, and it's not, people will find it and look, oh, this looks a little bit different than the pectoral sandpipers I'm watching. What is it? And it'll turn up
Yeah.
on What's This Bird. One record for
So-
Texas. Thank you, Sheridan. I knew you'd know.
Thank you. So this is another one that we're going to stay in California here now.
Yeah, this is
Another
a great
bird
one.
on a wire or a pole
one.
or a fence. It's hard to tell what that is. But this is not as straightforward or easy as one might think.
Yeah, we got a perching bird here. I think that's clear to see. Some things to stand out for when we've got kind of an unusual bird that we don't really know much about. It doesn't show a lot of field marks, other than the kind of plain greenish yellow kind of all over. It's got kind of largish gray feet. Hard to get a sense of the size of the tail and therefore the shape of the bird. But the way the focus is kind of sitting, I would say that tail is probably a little bit longer than we think. Bill is really interesting, relatively thin, curved bill.
Yeah, kind of.
But yeah, not a lot to go on this bird.
Yellow, a yellow perching bird that's not obviously large. First thing that comes to mind is warblers. This is, pardon me. I
Warblers,
think we can
for
rule
sure.
out warbler. We can rule out all the warblers except yellow-breasted chat because the bill is just too heavy.
The bill is too heavy. The feet are awfully big for a warbler
And the
too.
feet, so when I saw this bird, I had an initial thought, but then
Yep.
the very first thing I noticed after just my first glimpse of it, I noticed the feet and went, aha!
Yeah, it's funny that you posted these because we had like the two birds before, like the
Yeah.
sapsucker / nighthawk. We had exactly the same identification journey.
Yes.
for this bird. You kind of make a snap identification and then you kind of pull back immediately and say like, oh, maybe not. And then you kind of use your mind instead of your gut to get to the identification on this one. But yeah,
So there's one other
same
thing to
journey
note.
here.
One other thing to note is that there's a little bit of a yellow line at the base of the bill in front of the
right.
eye, and that is a gate mark that indicates that this bird is a juvenile. It is a recently fledged bird, and recently fledged birds
These are tough.
tend to have shorter bills and shorter
that's
tails,
interesting.
and because they're growing into everything after they leave the nest. So that's another clue that we've got going on here. But if you go through your field guide, pick up your Sibley and start looking for birds that this could be, you're going to come down to two, and that's western tanager and hooded oriole. Again, this is
For sure.
southern California, where really
Both
the
both are
only.
reasonable possibilities.
Both are
Yeah.
reasonable, but there aren't really any other choices that look like
Yeah.
this.
Yeah, if
Um,
we're in the southeast, painted bunting is another one that can kind
exactly.
of show this color. But yeah, structurally, this is all wrong for bunting. It's got a too long of a bill. It's got the feet are kind of too big. The tail, even though we can't tell a lot about the tail is too long for a bunting. A bunting would be kind of much more compact and smaller
Yeah.
on this bird. Yeah, so if we had another view of this bird, if we were looking sidelong onto it instead of directly on it, we would be able to see
Yep.
whether or not it had wing bars or not, and that is a really good indicator for Western Tanager versus hooded Oriole. Western Tanager kind of
Well, I think they
obviously
both.
has
I
those wing.
think they both.
Do they
They
both have
both
wing
have.
bars? I'm
They
gonna have to
both have
look up.
wing bars. Yeah.
One of
They
them
both
definitely
have
has
wing.
more than the other.
Yeah, they both have
Here we
wing
are as we
bars.
go to our phones here.
Yeah. I'm gonna say that they both. Yeah, hooded Oriole has got wing bars for sure. Um,
Got wing
and
bars, but they're much
pretty.
smaller.
Eh, all right, I'll give you that. Um, but as Nate and I both said, the thing that jumped out was the feet. Those
Yeah.
big blue gray, kind of chunky. I don't know how else you could describe them. Feet. That's an Oriole trait. And if you
Yeah,
look at
big
the
gray
Western,
feet. Big gray feet.
yep, if you look at the Western tanager immediately to the right there of our mystery bird, you see the much thinner, more delicate black legs and feet compared to the hooded Oriole on the right.
Yeah.
So that's one of our big giveaways. But look at this juvenile Oriole on the right. If you look at a field guide at an adult hooded Oriole, it's got a long black decurved bill. And this bird does not. This bird has a pale tanager-like bill, and
Yeah.
that will
It's
change
still too
quickly.
long for a tanager though. Like
It
tanager is still
is.
kind of thick at the base and it doesn't curve quite as much. And that's sort of another Oriole-esque field mark that really stands out to this bird, at least to me. And another thing, look at the length of the tail. And I don't mean like
Yes.
the absolute length of the tail. I'm looking at the length of the undertail coverts on a Western tanager. The tail is much shorter on a Western tanager, and the undertail coverts are going to stretch all the way, halfway down the length of the tail. Whereas on an Oriole, the undertail coverts might, in absolute terms, might be the same length, but the tail feathers just in general are going to stretch way beyond it. Orioles have kind of, especially hooded Orioles
And
and orchard Orioles to another extent, have kind of very longish tails, and you can see that on this bird too. So when I talked about like distance or I'm sorry, length of tail, it's sort of that proportion, the undertail versus the rest of the tail, that
yeah,
kind of gives you that impression of length as opposed to anything sort of absolute that you can't really tell from this photo.
yeah, and Jelko on Facebook points out that Western tanager has a gray tail,
Yep,
which it
yep, you
does,
can see that on that one. You can see it
and
on this.
you can kind of see, on the hooded Oriole on the right, you can see that the tail is graduated in the adult birds.
Mm-hmm.
That is a really solid field mark because
Mm-hmm.
if you're looking in California at a extraliminal orchard Oriole, which does show up in California every year,
Yeah.
the longer graduated tail of a hooded Oriole is a good solid field mark. But on really young birds,
Mm-hmm.
that can be
Yeah.
kind of fishy. But
I was
if
going
we
to go the
really,
other way because we had our state first record of hooded Oriole many years ago,
yeah,
that came to a feeder, and we had to differentiate from orchard Oriole, which would be the expected one. It was in the
right,
winter. It was late in the year, so even an overwintering orchard Oriole would be very rare. But
yeah,
still, you want to make sure that's the ID pair that you want to consider. And it was
absolutely,
the tail. It was the graduation of the tail,
yeah.
the tail feathers that really clinched that ID. I recall.
And you have to do use a little bit of imagination with the mystery bird on the left, which is no mystery, which is not a mystery any longer. It is
No longer.
a young hooded Oriole. But if you use a little bit of imagination, you can see that the tail is graduated. You can see the
Yeah.
end of the shorter innermost, on the bottom. I'm sorry, outermost.
You can see the
but
pale edges of it, and
you
that
can see
would,
the
that would
pale
indicate
edges
the
of those
the feather.
feathers.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. So yeah, that is a young hooded Oriole, and I believe that takes us to the end of the hour.
Even
and
with
the
our
end
technical
of our-
issues, Greg, we hit
Hey,
our mark once again.
Neuron.
Someone put us on television. We're here for it. We can hit a
Coming.
mark.
Hey, I hear there's going to be a slot open on late night coming up, so maybe we can jump in there.
Yeah, that's what people at late night want. They want an hour and a half of bird identification.
We keep it at
Every
an hour.
weekday.
We keep it at
Every
an
weekday. Yeah, that's right.
So, hey, thank all of you guys for spending this hour with us. And if you like what we do, if you like this program, if you love the ABA podcast, which is the American Birding Podcast, I think it's the best one out there about
wherever
animals and
you can
birds
find
and nature.
podcasts.
Please consider joining and supporting all these programs. There's a lot of great stuff that we do that you can take part in. Yeah, it's right up there, aba.org/join. There's join buttons all over our website. You don't even have to go to that URL. Just go to aba.org, and they're all over the place. We would love to have you join the club and be a part of
and put
everything
What's This
we
Bird
do.
as the reason for joining so that we can keep our jobs.
Absolutely. Like everybody, when you renew, say, "What's this bird?"
What's this bird? That's
what
I
did
did.
it.
That's why I came. Yeah.
All right. Thank you to everybody. And I think that is it for us.
Yep, we'll see you in a couple weeks. Sign up for our newsletter if you want a heads up on when we're going to be here, but probably in a couple weeks. Otherwise, we will see you. We'll see you later.
All
Adios.
right. Bye.